For now, I'm going to change gears a little bit. So this might seem abrupt, but I have a question for you. Have any of you seen the TV show Survivor? Raise your hand. I want to know. Okay, a good amount of you. Are there any super fans of Survivor in here? You've seen every season, you know it all? Okay, all right. I know one of those people, so I'm not saying, I don't know how many of them there exist, but recently, because I know one of those people, I've been watching that show. Not a ton, but occasionally. And there's a particular story that took place on that show that I felt was appropriate as an intro into our Bible story today. There's a character, he's a person, of course, a real person, named Charlie. And Charlie goes on this show, and he gets all the way to the end of Survivor. If you don't know the show, it's a competition reality show. They don't eat very much for a long time. They spend a month on an island in tribes voting each other out and playing a bunch of politics. It's dramatic, it's crazy. And Charlie made it through all of this. And he's in the final 3. And there's a jury of his peers that he has participated in getting out of the game that are going to vote on which of these 3 people deserves to win Survivor. And they're making their case. Now, Charlie had a close friend in the game named Maria. And Charlie and Maria were lockstep throughout the game. In fact, they were so similar that they both decided by about the final 6 that they had to knock each other out or else they couldn't win because they'd be on the jury and they'd have the exact same game. They'd have no case for why one or the other. And so they betrayed each other. But it went both ways. They both understood what was going on. And as Maria left, after her torch was snuffed, she said, "Get to the final 3. You've got my vote." And so Charlie knew that he had at least one person on the jury that was for him. He knew he could count on her. Except he lost the vote 5-3. And she was one of the people that voted against him. And he found out right after he lost the $1 million that his closest ally, and he thought his true friend, had not voted for him. And if she had, it would have been a tie. And it came out later that the person who would have broke the tie, the 3rd player in the final 3, would have voted for Charlie. This friend single-handedly took $1 million from Charlie by changing her vote against what she had promised outside the game. After she was already eliminated, she had no game reason to promise him that. He was hurt, visibly hurt on the show. And then he came back this season, in season 50, and you could tell it wasn't over. Charlie actually had a battle with another player because he heard that that player had betrayed their closest ally in the final vote. And he read his situation onto that hardcore. And he wanted nothing more than to get rid of this player. He was out for revenge. Now, I'm not going to spoil that story in case you want to go watch season 50 of Survivor. But what I am going to tell you is that for Charlie, a relationship was broken. And more than a year later, he's still broken over it. He's still living out of that. He's still living out of that hurt. There's no reconciliation, at least not that I'm aware of. How many of you have ever been in a situation where you felt betrayed? How many of you have ever been in a situation where someone you thought you could trust showed themselves false? What did you want to do with that person after? Maybe you wanted nothing to do with them, or maybe you wanted just enough to do with them to get back at them. But I think very few of you are thinking, "Oh, I wanted to restore my relationship with them. Oh man, I just love that person, and I just think it'd be great if we just healed and we were all good." Well, today we're going to hear a wild story. A story I don't understand. And a story I need to understand, and maybe some of you do too. Because today I'm not here to offer you my life experience. I'm not here to offer you my wisdom. I need this wisdom for me. Because I don't know what to do in these kinds of situations. I don't know how to heal. I have no gift. I have no power to offer you this morning. I am your humble servant, and I bring you Jesus of Nazareth. And this man was betrayed like no other. And he showed us what it might look like to come back. Here's where we are in the story. Jesus of Nazareth has been betrayed. His friends have left him. One of his disciples has literally handed him over for money to his accusers. He's been put on trial. He's been scourged and whipped. He's been executed on a Roman cross, and he has died. And during Jesus' darkest hour, arguably his closest friend, Simon Peter, denies knowing him. Not once, not twice, but 3 different times. And all of that takes place. And then on the 3rd day after Jesus' death, on Sunday morning, he has risen in glory and in victory from the dead. His tomb is empty, and he begins appearing to his core disciples. He appeared once, he appeared twice, and the second time he appeared, he let his disciple Thomas touch his scars. Now, Peter has seen the risen Lord twice, but when we get to our story today, his betrayal has not been addressed. I want you to sit with that for a minute. Imagine a person you betrayed as they were being arrested, beaten, and killed. And then they come back and they show up and you're happy, right? What are you thinking in this moment? What's he going to do? What's he going to say? Does he know? Of course he knows. He just rose from the dead. Who do I think I'm talking to? And in that situation, we enter John chapter 21. It reads like this. After these things, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias. And he revealed himself in this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, who was called Didymus, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 others of his disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, I am going fishing. They said to him, we're also coming with you. They went out and got into the boat, and that night they caught nothing. But when the day was now breaking, Jesus stood on the beach. Yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. So Jesus said to them, children, you do not have any fish to eat, do you? They answered him, no. And he said to them, cast the net on the right-hand side of the boat, and you will find the fish. So they cast it, and then they were not able to haul it in because of the great quantity of fish. Therefore, that disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it is the Lord. So when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he was stripped for work, and threw himself into the sea. But the other disciples came in the little boat, for they were not far from the land, about 200 cubits away, dragging the net full of fish. Thanks, Peter. So when they got out on the land, they saw a charcoal fire already made, and fish placed on it, and bread. Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish which you have now caught. Now he said that to them, plural, but Simon Peter went up and hauled the net to land full of large fish, 153. And although there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. None of the disciples ventured to inquire of him, who are you? Knowing that it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and the fish likewise. This was now the 3rd time that Jesus revealed himself to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. Now, when they'd finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, "Tend my lambs." He said to him again a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Shepherd my sheep." He said to him the third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt because he said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Tend my sheep." We're in the middle of a series called Back to Life, following Easter and talking about how the same Spirit that resurrected Jesus bodily and literally from the dead can breathe real life back into the dead spaces in our real everyday lives today. And today we're talking about this simple concept about how the Lord resurrects relationships. The Lord resurrects relationships. And in this passage, I believe that Jesus has given us a model for what it can look like to give God the space to heal and to resurrect relationships that have entered that dead place. A place of betrayal, a place of hurt, and a place of distance that feels uncrossable. And if you have a friendship or a marriage or a family relationship that feels too dead to be restored, I hope that this one will be for you. So we're going to start with the approach. How does Jesus approach Simon Peter after all the betrayal that's taken place between them? Jesus begins with grace on grace on grace. He reveals himself, that word is used multiple times in the passage, repeatedly to his disciples. He reveals himself to Peter. It's been a long night, but at daybreak, Jesus stands on the beach, and he stands with an invitation, and he says to them, "Children," or it could be translated also, "dear friends," because the sense here is not that Jesus feels that he is their father, but rather in the language of Greek, this word that he uses in this sort of context is typically, it's a normal way of addressing people that you have such a close relationship with and such care and affection for, that it's like the care that a father ought to have for their children. And so, yes, it's rightly translated children, but the vibe here is that you are dear to me, that I have affection for you, that I look on you and I smile, that I want you in my life, that I'm proud that you're mine, that we belong to each other. One of the best lexicons of Greek says, "one who is treasured in the way a parent treasures a child." And it also says, as a form of familiar address on the part of a respected person who feels himself terms of fatherly intimacy with those to whom he addresses. Okay, so Jesus calls them children. He addresses them affectionately, including Peter, and then he invites them to a place of hospitality. He builds a fire. He has bread that he's brought with him. He provides fish. And by the time they get to the shore, there's already fish cooking. And he says to them an invitation, "Come and have breakfast." A meal, a table, so to speak, metaphorically in this case. And he invites them to it with grace. My point here is this. According to Jesus' model for relationships that have been deeply broken, step one is that we set an environment of hospitality and grace toward the person who's hurt us. We invite them in, and we show them undeserved grace and love, and even affection, which is radical. And here's the key. You can do all of this. It will not work if it's just you. This is not a story about just any person. It's a story about Jesus of Nazareth. The sort of person who can just command 153 fish to jump into a net at a whim after professional fishermen have spent a whole night catching nothing. And that same person, if you create this space of hospitality and invite Jesus in, has the power to do what you cannot in that relationship. It's not the hospitality that works on its own. The hospitality is the faithful environment that we willfully create and say, Jesus, come do something. Step 2 is the confrontation. And this is critical. Jesus confronts the betrayal. If you read this story and you don't read it carefully enough in its context, you might think that Jesus never really addresses this with Peter. Like nowhere in the Gospels does Jesus ever go to Peter and he's like, remember how you betrayed me 3 times? Denied knowing me? Let's talk about that. So you might think that he didn't confront it, but actually he confronted it in an even more vulnerable way. An incredibly painful way for Peter. Jesus first, it says he prepared a charcoal fire. This is one word. And this word appears one other time in the entire New Testament. It's a very, very specific kind of fire. And it's the same kind of fire that is in this passage from earlier in the Gospel of John, chapter 18. Then the slave woman who was the doorkeeper said to Peter, "You are not also one of this man's disciples, are you?" He said, "I am not." Now the slaves and the officers were standing there, having made a charcoal fire. For it was cold, and they were warming themselves. And Peter was also with them, standing and warming himself. The passage goes on to describe 2 more times that different people around this fire asked Peter, "Weren't you with him? Are you sure? I could have sworn." And he denies it 2 more times, all while standing around this charcoal fire. And he shows up on the beach. The 3rd time Jesus has revealed himself to him, and there's a charcoal fire. And Jesus says, "Come over here. Let's have breakfast." Peter, by the way, is showing signs already of his desperate love and his desperate shame. What drives a person when they find out that Jesus is standing on the beach to leave the rest of the disciples to bring the boat in and jump into the water and swim as fast as you can? He's desperate to be near Jesus, and it seems he's desperate to prove to Jesus that he wants to be near Jesus because he knows what he's done. And he knows that Jesus knows. And he's like, "Please don't reject me. I'll do anything to prove myself to you. I know I let you down, but I'll be the first one out of the boat. And when you say to us, 'Go get the fish,' I'm going to drag the whole net by myself before they get a chance. I'm going to lay myself out, Jesus, please. Is there anything that can be done?" Jesus knows what he's doing. And then he doesn't address him as Peter. You see, Peter is a name that Jesus gave to Simon. He was just Simon. And Jesus called him Peter, which means rock, and said, "On this rock I will build my church." Peter's walking around with a name of some prestige that he was given by Jesus in a key moment where he, among all the disciples, answered a question correctly, a key question. "Who do you say that I am?" Jesus asks. And Peter speaks out among all the disciples. And he says, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus gives him the name Peter. But he doesn't address him as Peter, not even once. In fact, he doesn't even address him as Simon. He overspecifies in a very formal way, almost as if to emphasize the current distance between them. To remind him, it's not all okay that you did this. It's not just okay. We're not just going to pretend it didn't happen. Simon, son of John, do you love me? Jesus intends for him to recognize, "Peter, I know, and we need to address this. We can't just pretend." Start with grace, yes, but also refuse to avoid the hard work of honest conflict. Avoiding conflict doesn't heal relationships. And sometimes when relationships have been broken, the path to healing goes through pain. Peter, it says, was hurt because he asked him the third time, "Do you love me?" The third question around a charcoal fire. Come on. Peter was hurt, but we have to embrace the hurt and allow it to be truly healed. We have to bring it out into the open, or it will not experience the light. And we can't drive away the darkness if we keep it hidden from the light. I want you to think of it like this. This illustration came to me as I was trying to think, how do I explain this any better? Cleaning and disinfecting a wound. You ever got a cut or something, and before you had a chance to wash it, it scabs over? And then you have a choice. You can avoid the pain of deep cleaning that cut, which may involve scraping off the scab. It may involve disinfecting it. Have you ever put alcohol on a cut that's open so that you can disinfect it? Have you ever felt that sting? But that is exactly where healing takes place. Before the cut can heal properly, to avoid infection, you have to go through the pain of opening it up to something with cleansing power. And that's what this is like in relationships too. But it's not over. There is one final step. Once you've begun with grace, and once you have entered into gracious but honest conflict, and allowed it all to come to the surface, and been honest about it, then there is one last thing, the responsibility. Jesus invites Peter back into his true identity. He asks him thrice, "Do you love me?" And the first time, interestingly, "Do you love me more than these?" Now, I could be wrong, but I think he means these other disciples sitting here. And I think the reason he's asking is because you're the one jumping out of the boat. You're the one dragging the net of fish by yourself, trying to prove that you love me more than these. Do you? Is it just for show, or do you really? And if you do, tend my sheep. Some translations render it feed my sheep, and it can mean either. The idea is, he has a responsibility. He was called Peter for a reason. On this rock I will build my church. Peter, you have a calling. You're a part of my mission. You're a partner to me, a friend to me, a dear one to me. And so if you indeed love me the way you claim, if it's more than just words, and I know that it is, because I know all things, you just said so. If that is all true, then do what you were created to do. Join me in our mission together. Here's something you might not recognize. True friendship and true fellowship are not merely enjoying one another's company. It's not about having compatible personalities or having similar interests in video games or something. That's not what makes real friendship. At most, that's companionship for a little while. At most, that's a distraction. True friendship is defined this way. It requires shared mission. If you don't have something you're striving towards together, if you're not cooperating toward a shared goal, and sometimes that goal might just be to parent a child, or it might be to remain faithful through all things and to covenant to not be apart. It doesn't have to be the same in all cases, but there has to be a mission. There has to be something you're about together. That's what makes someone who's just an acquaintance or a companion or someone with similar interests into a friend. And Jesus says, I don't want you to be any more distant than that. I'm bringing you all the way in. I want you as my friend, Peter. I want you as my dear one on mission with me. Tend my sheep, shepherd my sheep. Full reconciliation comes with full restoration to mission. It comes with calling. And sometimes that's the hardest part, to figure out, given what's between us, given what has transpired, what is appropriate? What is an appropriate level of inviting in, and what is the right timing of that? I'm not here to answer those questions for you this morning. That requires wisdom. And it is specific to circumstance. But the model Jesus shows us is that ultimately, for reconciliation to complete, there has to be responsibility brought in. Jesus reminds him of who he is, and he makes Peter realize, you are not your worst moment. Our relationship is not defined by your worst mistake. Today you are Simon, son of John. But if you love me, I will make you Peter again. You will always be who I made you to be. You will be a shepherd. You will feed my sheep, and you will glorify my name. Because the Lord who raised Jesus from the dead has the power to raise our relationships from the dead, and he's shown us how. 3 steps. Lead with grace. Engage in honest conflict and confession, and then affirm identity and restore true fellowship. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds just to think about this question before we move on. Lord, how are you calling me to respond today?